whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Okay, forest animals, kids are coming to the forest, and it's up to us to make their visit a good one. Sparrow, have you practiced the most popular bird songs for the year?
Of course.
Catchy. I like it. River, how's the temperature?
It's a refreshing 52 degrees, man.
I love it. Turtle.
He's not here yet, man.
He's late every morning. Okay. Squirrel.
The forest has been preparing just for you. To learn more about cool things to do in the forest, visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This is a test of the emergency podcast system. Activated by contract termination. Rumors of our demise are greatly exaggerated. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington. She's blessed to be a Bible-reading, gun-toting, Air Force veteran, wife and mom, righteously American.
Welcome. Hey, happy Friday to you. Guess what? We're here. We're live and direct, and we're having a good time on a Friday afternoon. We have Good News Friday. We have so much other awesome information that I want to share with you today. I'm going to start off by just saying, praise God for giving us the capacity to learn new things. I'm excited. I'm excited that I can still learn new stuff, y'all. And I'm not saying that because I particularly think I'm old or anything, but it is true that it can be different trying to learn new things, especially if it's something that you kind of created your own little mental block in your mind. Could you do it yourself? Could I do this myself? So let's start off with a little bit of audio from Senator Tim Scott. This is super important what he had to say. And then we're going to launch off into today on the show. In fact, before we get to the audio, today on the show, we are going to discuss the fact that regardless of what the polls say, President Trump continues to be able to just blast through an amazing amount of rallies and to pack them out to capacity and then to add more people outside who are watching who couldn't get inside. And this defies the poll numbers. Even Fox News is saying he has less than 50% of the people want to vote for him. But yeah, the rallies don't show that. And he wasn't exactly in God's country up there in Minnesota. No offense to anyone who's in Minnesota, but you know what I mean. Minnesota has the heavily popularized, the places in Minnesota that they talk about the most are the parts where the liberals reign supreme. Ilhan Omar is from Minnesota, and there's a lot of information from there that just doesn't portend greatly for the president, but he's going there. He wants to win the state. And so we're going to talk about that. We are also going to dive into some Good News Friday about a tiny home community in Austin, Texas, which is a liberal stronghold. And I want to highlight the people who brought it together. And if there's any link that you're going to look at over the weekend, maybe on Sunday when you're kind of getting ready for the week, whenever, I encourage you to go to listen.stacyontheright.com, check the show notes, and check out this story because there are pictures there. These are what some people would consider to be glorified sheds, but the people who are living in them are homeless. And they're really they're the neediest of society down there in Austin. Every person who gets to live in this community has been homeless for more than a year in Austin. So you can't just migrate down there as a homeless person and then get in. You really have to be a part of the community. I want to see this replicated all over. I think it's going to be a part of our Blueprint Part 2 as Project 21 members. We put out the original one. It was well received, and now we're looking at doing it again. So we'll talk about that and some other stuff. But first, can y'all just work with me here right quick? Senator Tim Scott.
Because if not, they do control the gavels. They have the power, and they can do a lot of really bad things. Now, look, I find it interesting that Pelosi is not even going to bother to try to fight the administration and take this to court. I think that's new information. I'm surprised at that, but that means they really are just racing to get this done. And finally, I think what you're seeing is they're on a sugar high with polls right now. They've got 90% of the media poisoning people. They've got all the tech companies poisoning people. So they read the polls right now, and they want to race quickly, as long as it's 50% plus one, to impeach the president. It's like I think you said, a rocket docket impeachment. That's what they're trying to go for.
Okay, so that was actually Devin Nunes. That was Devin Nunes, not Tim Scott. So I will double check on that little bit of audio myself right on the break coming up here. But what he's talking about is the impeachment and how horrible it's been to watch the Democrats really bastardize this process and turn it into something that's a mockery when we all know that impeachment is very serious. And as we went over yesterday on the show, we talked about exactly what that means, what that feels like, what makes an impeachment different in America than what people do, say, in Great Britain or other parliamentary systems. We have a unique system of government that really invests all the power with the people. So it's interesting to hear that. So I think that's number 2. I wonder what so that's cut 5. I have it labeled as cut 5. I label these. I wonder what number 2 is.
And they can do a lot of really bad things.
Okay, so it's the same thing?
Majority is that they spent 9 months, and I saw it up front and personally.
Okay, that's Collins. So Collins was also talking about what happens with the majority, which is right now the controlling majority in the House is the Democrats, and how they're manipulating this process so that it really isn't a process. And I thought what he had to say was interesting. Here it is, cut 1.
Majority is that they spent 9 months, and I saw it up front and personally in the Judiciary Committee, how they ham-handedly waited for Mueller, waited for investigations, and nothing came. And so what they've decided is we can't find anything to get this president on, and the economy's great, everything's doing well. So let's go to something that we can now take to Intelligence Committee, and Speaker Pelosi has said, we're not going to do this the way we've always done an impeachment inquiry. We're not going to have the hearings that we had in the procedures that we had for Clinton or for Nixon. We're going to do this in behind closed doors, away from the view of the American people, which is un-American. It's not what we are about. It's not due process. And so that's the way they only feel like they can move it. But I think in the end of the result, it's going to backfire on them because the American people are not going to stand a partisan witch hunt is what they're seeing right now.
So he's right in part. I agree with him. His assessment is accurate, but there are plenty of American people who want to see a partisan witch hunt. There are plenty of American people who are sore losers in their real life, who are sore losers in their political lives, who are sore losers on behalf of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, because it was as if he were still on the ballot in some ways. In a lot of ways, it was as if it was a repudiation of him. But in other ways, it was an extension of his presidency. And Americans chose not to do that. And I know so many conversations keep coming back to this idea that Hillary Clinton won the electoral college, but not the electoral college. She won the popular vote, and President Trump won the electoral college. But if you look at the county by county list, it's red, 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 except in the heavy Democratic strongholds. If you look at California, where the majority of her popular vote bump comes from, a quarter of their population is illegal aliens, and they allow every trick in the book to try to get people on the ability to cast a vote, whether or not they are legitimately eligible. So that's not something that actually has bearing here when it comes to, hey, the American people. When we say the American people, I understand what the Republicans mean when they say the American people. They actually mean constitutionally limited government type folks who just want to be left alone. People like you and me. But that's not the majority of the American people. At least I would say we're probably equally split. The ones who are in the middle, who kind of get to decide every single election, they're in a unique position because they tend to they're setting themselves up for being wooed by these Democratic operatives in the media, but by those Democratic operatives really painting a picture that isn't true. And for every bit of it they accept, they move the goalposts, or as Glenn Beck would say, the Overton window, if you will, where they're moving it so that reality doesn't closely reflect what we actually know reality to be. we see that in our language. We see that in a way like the NBA story from yesterday. There's a little update on the reporter who asked the question. Now they've gone so far as to apologize to her. The NBA has for saying she was a CNN reporter, but she had a British accent. And they said they were sorry. It's just that they were trying to keep the questions about basketball. And they didn't give her a chance to get an answer. And the other thing I thought was interesting about that clip of her asking is that the team handler shut her down, and the two NBA players who just happen to be black are sitting there at a table. They literally looked around the room and then just sat there silently, as if the team manager could stop them from expressing their opinion. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in lefty circles about how the NFL specifically, but the NBA as well, because there aren't a lot of black team owners, that it's a slave. It's like a plantation. It's a slave state for a group of people who they hate it when Republicans refer to the Democratic hold over black American voters as a plantation. And I used to use that kind of language, but I don't anymore because I understand the concerns surrounding it. And really, I just want to converse in a way that people can understand and not get too hung up on. I'm not really into worrying about people being triggered, but there are some things that I can say, okay, that's a valid point. Maybe we don't say that way. And so it's interesting that team handler, the team manager, whoever it was, a little young person on the side, was a white person who basically told those two big black dudes who earned multiple tens of millions of dollars a year playing a sport that they couldn't weigh in on a political question. It's not like the team manager set it up with them beforehand or said, do you guys want to answer this? Or would you prefer not to answer this leading? None of that. Just straight up from the sidelines off camera. We're not answering any questions about that. So those two guys were disenfranchised as well. Now, y'all know me. I don't give a hill of beans about basketball players, people currently in the league weighing in on politics. Now, I understand that when basketball stars, whoever, football stars, they leave their primary profession of playing the sport, and sometimes they delve off into writing and they really become quite expert at commenting on culture and even politics. This happens. I did not start off as a political commentator or radio host. I get it. You can morph into that. And so I am interested in people who have some life experience opining. I'm really not interested in the Hollywood types doing it unless they have a background in politics or political science or something that kind of gives them some weight. But it's interesting that they were shut down. And I mean, they were literally, it was almost as if someone on the side had said, shut up or don't answer. You can't answer that. And they didn't even put up a stink because either one of them could have just raised their finger and said, actually, I do want to weigh in on this. I do have something to say about freedom. So I'm going to go ahead and weigh in. But I guess, they say it's a plantation. They say that the team owners control every aspect of their lives and treat them like slaves. I don't know about all the rest of that because how can you be a slave when you're making tens of millions of dollars? But it certainly is interesting to see them shut down like that. They can't even comment. Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting is we've been doing this Freedom in Christ Bible study. I was just looking to see if I had my little resource there. And yesterday, we went into, as a part of what we discussed yesterday, we discussed if someone believes things that aren't true. And I thought it was so applicable to the conversations we have on this show on a daily basis. Namely, if you say, okay, look, the example I gave yesterday when we were talking about this is if I don't believe that the police have authority over me, I will do things, breaking the law mainly, that will cause me to interact with the police. So if I don't believe the police have any authority over me, I will break the law. And when they do come and interact with me, if I say, you don't have any authority over me, you can't ask me questions, you can't arrest me, you can't give me an order, then, face plant to the pavement, handcuffs, and off you go for whatever infraction you've committed, or whatever, in this case, I'm the example, whatever infraction I've committed. And so my belief that the police have no authority over me is rooted in a lie and would therefore cause me trouble, pain, suffering, monetary, damages and harm, that type of thing. And it's the same with any lie that we believe. And so Satan comes to lie, steal, kill, and destroy, right? That's what the Bible says. He also wants to convince you in your own voice that you're worthless, that God doesn't love you, that he has nothing good for you, he's always mad at you, a whole bunch of different things, and that your identity is that of someone who is broken and should be hiding and ashamed. And therefore, if you're hiding and you're ashamed and you're already in the dark, you might as well just do these drugs, have sex with this person, whatever it is that he's trying to get you to do, gossip, lie, steal, or harbor resentment, unforgiveness, and anger towards people who probably deserve it, but that's not what we're called to do. So in the Freedom in Christ, and I've been sharing just a little bit as we've gone along, I can't recommend it enough. I was told over and over again, you have to take this Bible study. It's so freeing. And I just took my sweet little time. I should have took this 5 or 6 years ago when I was first told, oh my goodness, this is so good. You can actually get the resources on the website for Freedom in Christ Ministries, or you can go on Amazon and you can order it there. So the videotape, the leader guide, and the participant books, and you can do it at home in your family setting. But I would recommend that you do it at church, because when you're in a group with other people, you learn so much more. So Satan's lies are, you are a sinner because you sin. Your identity comes from what you've done. Your identity comes from what people say about you, and your behavior tells you what to believe about yourself. God's truth is that you are a saint, one declared righteous by God. You do sin, but you're a saint. Your identity comes from what God has done for you. Your identity comes from what God says about you, and your belief about yourself determines your behavior. So amazing to have this resource. All right, we'll be back in a minute.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
When is the best time to talk to your family about staying in touch during a disaster? When floodwaters reach your door? When wildfires are engulfing the edge of your neighborhood? Or an earthquake is destroying buildings? Or is the best time perhaps today? During a disaster, you may not be able to stay in touch with your family or friends as easily as you think. Go to ready.gov/communicate and make your emergency plan today. Don't wait. Communicate. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Hey, welcome to Stacy on the Right. And thank you so much for being here today. It's Happy Friday, Happy Good News Friday. And we're just going over everything that has to do with the president. Really, it's kind of amazing. The president actually spent time with the people of Minnesota last night, and they just had what I would say was a rip-roaring good time. And in doing so, they have just had an amazing opportunity to hear from the president, to hear from some of the people who are in his inner circle, and to just kind of catch the fever for it. So there was a little bit of violence. There was some violence going on. It was unacceptable. They were beating up people outside of the Trump rally, and these are anti-Trumpers, really just letting their emotions fly. And so that was what Tim Scott was weighing in on. And I'm still working on getting that for you. So I will have that for you in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about our Good News Friday, and then we're going to circle back around to some of these other items. And let me just pop over into the chat rooms, because sometimes managing everything myself, I have trouble getting over into. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Oh, volume is too low. Let's see if that's better. Is that better? Yeah. So it's Lynn and Melody and Douglas, Doug Poss, Black Conservative OG and Lynn and Cynthia. Hey, happy Good News Friday, everybody. Thanks for being in there. And then on Facebook, oh, ton of likes. Okay. Hello. It's Friday, so we have a good number of people in there. Janet, Karen, who else is in here? Tina, Marilyn, Jackie Howard, David, George, Jennifer, Ronald joined the show. Doug is over here too. Thank you guys for being here. It's so nice to see everybody on the live stream. And then, of course, I know it's Stacy on the Right, my website. I know that we have people in the chat room over there. Oh, look. Okay, I don't know if this is actually accurate, because I don't know when's the last time I refreshed this page. But I wanted to go into Good News Friday for this information. And then we will also dive into all of the betrayals of the Kurds, because everyone's saying that we have to be good to we have to keep fighting for the Kurds, even though the Kurds have been fighting in the Middle East for just 30, 40 years, probably longer than that. And in our estimation of things, where we have this, it's called blue on green violence. And the blue on green violence is where our troops are training Afghanis, and the Afghanis, when they're finally trained and they're handed their gun for the first time, they turn and shoot the person who trained them and kill them. And so for me, I keep going back to there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And one of the worst things in the world is for an American soldier to be overseas training someone and have that person kill him, and then they come home in a body bag. And that's some of what the president was talking about last night. He said, I have to sign these letters to these families where their son or daughter was killed overseas. And some of the circumstances, it's not what you would consider a wartime kill. It's not like they were in war, they were fighting in a war zone or something. These are people who are just in a training scenario with live fire, and the person they're training, as soon as they're given the gun, they turn and they shoot their trainer to death, which is an American kid. And so I've got the chat room open over here. Smoke, Chi, Richard Layton. Hey, everybody over here in the chat room over at Stacy on the Right. It looks pretty full. I can't see everyone's names. Thank you for being there. So this is what's wrong with us continuing this war. So we'll get into that. But right now, I want to go to this. This was the story that kind of gave me a whole lot of really encouragement for going into the weekend. Okay. So the thing that I notice about the homeless situation is it comes about after heavy gentrification or success in one sector or another. In Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, San Francisco, places like that in California, it's the tech boom that's actually driving the homelessness. What happens is people who are working in technology, where they would, if they were working in some other sector, they'd be earning maybe $70,000 or $80,000 a year, or earning $400,000 and $500,000 a year, and so they can afford to pay for better housing. So people who are selling homes realize that the market has changed and they increase their prices, which drives out people who aren't in that income bracket. So the people who are homeless in California and in Austin, which has experienced a tech boom, they are people who were previously gainfully employed and they had a place. But when their place, the lease is up and the landlord says, yeah, we're selling this whole building as condos, or we're raising this building and we're putting up whatever. The single family home you've been renting, you can't rent it anymore. When your lease is up, you're done. And when they go to look for something else, all of the apartments that are affordable are taken. And so they're looking at these houses that are like 1.6 million. They can't afford that. They couldn't afford it before. They've lost their place that they could afford. So these are not people who are, you've got $20,000 in the bank and you're like, well, let's just move to, let's move across the country to a cheaper area. Because in my mind, I'm gonna be real here, and this may be where you come from too. When I hear a story like that, I'm like, well, if that happened to us, we would move. Well, we would, but if you don't have any savings or if you don't have any family, like worst comes to worst, push comes to shove, if my parents aren't in the same situation, there's no way we would be homeless because my family would take us in. There's no way we would be homeless even if my parents were in that situation, because extended family in states all over the country would just say, come on, y'all all pile in here, but you just better know you're helping cook, you're helping clean, and everybody's working. Kids are working, you're working. Everybody's going to have a job to help support this situation. And that is what would happen. But this story actually takes a look at what drives the homelessness for these people in Austin. One of the things that's driving it is that these people don't have that extended family to fall back on. So the lady who is the center of this story over at Business Insider, this is in Austin, Texas, and the name of the place that she helps to run, she also lives there, is called Community First. It's 180 formerly homeless residents living in 200 square foot tiny homes at Community First Village. They pay rent that averages $300 a month. They go to work thanks to on-site employment opportunities, and there's a 2-acre farm on the property where they can get their food at the market once a week. So each of these units, and we're talking efficiency here. And when I say it's a glorified shed, I mean it's a shed that has been electrified, and it has all of the things that a normal apartment would have: insulation, drywall walls, a ceiling, lights, flooring. Like I said, a kitchen, which means just one wall, part of one wall has cabinets and a small refrigerator, sink, full-size stove was what I saw in the pictures. And then, there's a closet. There's no bathroom in these things. There's a bedroom at the back. There are windows in it, and there's a room enough for her to have a couch that's basically situated directly across from the kitchen. She has a bunk bed in her bedroom. Because remember, now let's face it, have we not all seen Chip and Joanna Gaines' shed, where it's her potting shed and it's bigger than most kids' bedrooms? It's huge. It's the size of someone's living room, and it has a vaulted ceiling, and it's almost 2 stories tall on the inside, and it's gorgeous. And she just has a big table in the middle, and it's electrified, heated and cooled, and it's across a patio where you walk through a garden. It's fantastic. I think she's one of the most talented designers I've ever seen, and I am a design junkie, and I read all the books. I have a ton of the books, and I love, that's like a thing I do to kind of decompress. And I've been doing it ever since my husband and I were married, and before that, reading those kinds of books, checking the magazines and the books out of the library, and looking for tips and ideas, and sewing pillows and curtains, and making tree skirts. I'm crafty as all get out. That's like a whole nother channel that I could have if I could just figure out how to do all this stuff without driving myself insane. So off on that tangent, back to the size of the sheds. A shed can be anything, but in this case, the sheds we're talking about are the typical sheds that you think of, bigger than your tiny shed. So bigger than your like $1,000 to $2,200 shed. It's about 300 square feet is what they're working with. But the reason they don't have a bathroom or a shower in there is because that's communal. They have communal baths and showers on the property. All of the area in between the sheds, they're set up like little rows of homes, but not on a straight line, on a curving, winding pathway, so that when you're walking through it, you're walking through a neighborhood. And most of the sheds have a porch or some kind of paved area or, stone or something where you can have seats or a little couch or something to sit on outside so you can actually spend time outside. And part of the draw of this is community. Homeless people who've been on the streets who are desperate to have somewhere to lay their head that's safe, that's dry, that's clean, to have a shower, to have the ability to use the restroom indoors. People who these are civilized people. They're not criminals. Some of them were criminals. So these are regular people, but they're living in this community. And one of the main reasons that the community works for them is that the people who live there with them, they literally become their neighbors. So they're not just living there in isolation. The reason you don't have your own bathroom and your own shower and the huge kitchen and, the reason it's not a full-size house is because when we live in full-size houses, many of us go into our 4 walls or our 18 walls or our 36 walls and we just stay in there and we don't communicate or interact with our neighbors. And if you have the ability to do that and you're self-sustaining, that's your choice. But if you're homeless and you're coming back from that and you're desperate for connection, then a community like this gives you that. So here are the high points. It's located on the east side of Austin, Texas. Their original location was actually they were threatened. Their lives were threatened because they were near a community that didn't want a homeless community near them. So they didn't do the ground lease on that the city council had offered. And instead, donors got together and made an amazing, kind of fundraising effort, and they bought some land where they put this village. It's not the first tiny home village used to house homeless populations in the U.S., but it's still unique in its concept. The village is the brainchild of founder Alan Graham, who spent years serving the city's homeless before pooling $18 million in privately donated funds to construct Community First back in 2015. As the name implies, the project takes a Community First, a spinoff of the Housing First term approach to create a sense of community amongst residents. He says there's a philosophy that if we build housing and then put people in housing, that mitigates the problem. But he says it takes more than just homes. And so as you scroll down, you see the lady who runs everything. Her last name's Draper. She was homeless for quite a while. And then she found this. And not only does she live there, but she works there too. She's kind of the maintenance person running around preparing the tiny homes. When someone moves out, she prepares the place, cleans it, gets it ready. She even sets up the first supply of food that's in there, toiletries, soap, toothpaste. All of the shampoo products are from Paul Mitchell. The owner of Paul Mitchell actually donates it. They have a salon on the site. It's really a barber shop. It's a shed. And it is where you can go and get your hair cut, get your face shaved, or, whatever it is that you might need while you're living there. They have a market where you can go and purchase items that you need, and you have to work. So they have an auto body place there where cars are repaired, and you have to work at one of the places there or somewhere in the community, because if you don't pay your rent, you're booted, because they say if without paying the rent, you're not a part of the community. It costs around $6 million a year to maintain. About $900,000 of that is covered by the rent that they charge, and the rest is donations. Now, look, I want to put this out there for us as Christians, as human beings, as, politically on the right. This is the kind of thing we need to be coming together with whoever is interested in doing it and creating these communities across the country. And the reason I say that is because if you're not interested in living in a shed yourself, if you can't even imagine that, really, the extent of your ability to imagine is irrelevant when compared with what is so important, and that is that people are homeless. Now, in this community, you can't bring kids, and you can't be it's no couples. It's all single people who are homeless who live in this community. There are other communities that don't have those restrictions. This community is actually, they call them missionals. Christians have moved in on the outskirts of the community, and they live in RVs, and some of them brought their own trailers, which are sheds too. And they live nearby, and they provide counseling and Bible studies and just anything that has to do with Christian ministry. And they have moved in next to this community because they want to minister to these people. So there's nothing more like what Jesus mandated for us to do as Christians than for us to see a need and fill it, for us to say, and I know how it is. I live in one of those communities where if anybody even thought about putting up, buying 20 acres out here and putting up a homeless community or a tiny shed community, there would be backlash. But this isn't about that. It's not that it has to go adjacent to some affluent community. It's that there are thousands of acres in the city of St. Louis where this concept could be implemented. There are also areas further out from the city where this could be implemented. This is not something that's impossible. And if you think about how many GoFundMes have been launched and have raised just millions of dollars, and that they put this up for 18 million, the wheels should be turning for us as people. The wheels should be turning. So I'm interested in more than what we're seeing here. And I told you, I think I said 300 square feet. It's actually a 27-acre village housing the most vulnerable of the capital city's homeless population. And 200 square foot is about the size of each of the little sheds. And what I also found interesting about it is that because the people who are running it have been homeless before, and because they're interested in serving only the homeless population, when I say it's a glorified shed, in your mind, you might be thinking of that thing that you see when you drive by Lowe's. And that's the basis for it. It's that thing that's in the parking lot. But what they've done is they've actually taken the shed and put a porch on it, put doors on it, made it look like an actual tiny house, which makes it special. So that's our Good News Friday. We just need more of these. We'll be back with more. Stay there.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. 1, okay, cool guy. 2, 3 times. Next, oh, I put it in reverse. Meep, meep, meep. Then I take it up and down, up and down. And that, kiddos, is called the forklift.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now that's dancing. Sure beats flossing.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Hey everybody, Rachel Ray here. Nothing brings a bigger smile to my face than cooking up a big meal for the whole family and lots of friends. But there's not enough room at my table for the 17 million kids in our country who struggle with hunger. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks collects surplus food to give hope to hungry kids. But they can't do it without your help. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. So listen, here's something that we have going on. We have there's this attitude that we have to do something about it, but it can't ever happen near us. And I understand it, but if we keep on this way with the homeless problem exploding the way it is across the country, we're never going to make a dent in it. And if you don't have sympathy for the adults who are homeless, and some of the stories here and the people that are highlighted in this piece, when you look at their faces, you feel something. At least for me, I was looking at the faces in the article and I was imagining what it must be like to go from just being fine and then to kind of just for some people it's really slow. It's like they're bunking on a friend's couch or they have a place but they're just barely making it, and then they have something happen, they get laid off, they're whatever that happens, they're told that they can't renew their lease. Sometimes it's their own fault, they get kicked out of their place because they've got people over who are doing crime, whatever. Then all of a sudden, it turns into a situation where the people who work with the homeless, they describe it as a spiral that you can't seem to get out of. It's like you're stuck in it, where once you're no longer in your own place and you're homeless, it is so hard to become a person who's not homeless anymore, because you can't give them an address. You can't, if you're homeless and you can't even have an address from which to receive your bills, you're probably maybe not even having a cell phone now. So how do they contact you to let you know they're fine with you moving in? You get to a place where you've exhausted all the friends' couches, everyone's just sick to death of you, and you still don't have anywhere to be. Then you're out in the homeless population and you're with people who, some of them are mentally ill, some of them are violent. You're literally, you go from just the normalcy of coming home and unlocking your door or pulling into your garage and getting out of your car and going inside and going into your warm bed. We just take it for granted. We really do. Have you ever just pulled up at home and stopped for a second in your own driveway, or, pull up on your street if you have street parking and glance up at your place, whether it's an apartment or a condo or a single family, whatever it is? Have you ever just pulled up for a second and just thought, man, I'm not only glad to be home right now, but I'm so grateful that I'm home, right? And so we don't think about that. And I don't want you to feel like, you're bad because you have a home, or you should feel guilty, but we really do need to be more grateful and cognizant of what just being able to go to a door and when you put your key in it and turn it, you're good and you're going in. And when it's time to make your mortgage or your rent payment, you're making that payment and it's not a hardship for you. We have got to be more cognizant of how many, we're approaching millions of people who are homeless and they don't have anywhere to go. And for a lot of them, it's one thing to be homeless and a man. I mean, don't you think men experience a lot of brutality and we discount it because they're men? But the brutality that women experience when they're homeless, you're not safe. These women are not safe. And so for them to have a place where they can go in and lock the door, that's one of the pictures in this article is Draper. She says, here's her quote: "It was so hard to be homeless. You had to do everything. You had to hustle for everything, shoes, socks. I mean, it was just brutal." And she's an interesting looking person. She's short, blonde hair. She's kind of rugged looking. She's got tattoos across her fingers, kind of like on the music videos. She's got tattoos all over her arms and everything. But she's the joy that comes out of this laptop, where she's putting a little plant under the window on the sink for another resident to move in. You can feel it. It emanates from here. The photographs of these tiny little sheds that have been outfitted with a porch, and they extend the roof out to make the porch. And then, it's paved with the huge stone pavers that you can put the Quikrete in between. So it's literally a walkway that you can just stroll up and down. And there's bikes leaned up, not bikes strapped in or locked up, bikes leaned up against the houses. The $17 Lowe's Adirondack chair, we have a bunch of them around our pool that you just throw that chair out, and then in the winter you stack them up and you throw them in, underneath your deck or whatever. They have those outside the front porches here. And some of them are really creative. They look creative. And And to show you the expansiveness of the problem, according to a KVUE Austin report, the homeless population grew from 6,232 to 7,992 between 2013 and 2018, which is a growth rate of 28.2%. That's more than double the rate of the city's overall population growth during that time. So more people became homeless than moved into Austin. And Austin's a very hot destination. Liberals love it because it's liberal, but it's also in Texas where the policies are generally conservative and the taxes are low. Also, the weather's warm all the time. Austin's rise in homelessness is comparable to San Francisco's, another city known for its urban homeless crisis, where homelessness rose by about 30% since 2017. Now, I talked a little bit about Alan Graham, who is the community first founder and CEO of its Christian-based parent organization, Mobile Loaves and Fishes. And he picked up on that urgency after years of serving Austin's homeless community prior to launching Community First Village. Now, he and his wife actually moved out of a affluent Austin suburb. So they were living large, just the two of them, empty nesters. And they moved into this community that they started because they wanted the residents to know that they didn't just put the community together, they live there too. So if you have a problem or if you just want to talk or if you just need an ear, you can go to his door and knock on the door and go in. So I want to go over to the chat room. A lot of people are typing in. Talking about a ministry in downtown Jackson, Mississippi, We Will Go Ministries. It's a ministry to inner city homeless. This model acquires abandoned homes in the downtown area, a couple of city square blocks, and restores them to living condition. And then there are way too many details to give here, but it's such a great model for living off of resources already in place and church donations that come from across the state. She says they have a food pantry, clothes closet, neighborhood garden, and an open air worship pavilion. It's worth checking out. WeWillGo.org. So, and I love the show. Thank you. I love the listeners. You guys are awesome. I just gotta say, so that we live in a land where anything's possible, where any regular person can reach hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes millions of people, through YouTube or Facebook. And if you have something that you want to do, it's not a matter of, well, can it be done? It's how would I like to accomplish it? That's this country that we live in. And we are still the most philanthropic place on the planet. For such a tiny population of 300 million people or so, we outgive everyone else on the planet. And in this country, it is normal. I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many times me and my husband have been out to dinner with the kids, especially when they were smaller. Now, you guys know we have young adults now. But when they were smaller, they were so stinking cute. We should have sent them all to the little model agency so they could just go and be on little postcards and stuff. But when they were smaller, we would go to IHOP after church on Sunday or Ruby Tuesday. And sometimes when it was time for us to pay, the server would say, put your money away. This couple that was sitting across from you, the older couple, they paid for your food when they paid for their food. And we would be like, what? Where are they? Oh, they didn't want your thanks. They just wanted you to know that they thought you had a beautiful family and happy Sunday. And so then I would look at my husband, he'd be like, well, and so we'd look around the restaurant and find somebody, and we would be like, okay, pay for them. We're going to pay for them instead of, because our food's paid for, so we're going to pay for them. And we've heard on the radio here, Joy FM is our local contemporary Christian station, where they have something called You've Been Joyed. You just got joyed. And so what you do is you're in the drive-through at whatever restaurant or, whatever fast food, Chick-fil-A, and you pay for the person. You pay for yours and the person behind you. When the person behind pulls up and realizes that you paid for theirs and you've already driven away and they can't thank you, they pay for the person behind them. The record here in St. Louis is it went on for the entire day. It started in the morning at a Chick-fil-A and it went on until like 9 o'clock at night. The first person paying for the one behind all day long. It happens all the time. All the time. You pull up to the restaurant, someone paid for you, boom. So back to this story. Because I believe these communities, I think this is a trend. This isn't the first tiny home community that I've talked about or the story I've read. I wanted to cover this one because it's so cute. Like when you think tiny home community, the first thing you think is, oh, that probably looks like garbage. This is a great looking community. And she drives a golf cart around the community during the day, doing her duties, cleaning the units that are empty, just helping in whatever way she can. That's her job. That's what she gets paid. So she says, Graham says, we believe the single greatest cause of homelessness is a profound catastrophic loss of family. And that's what they try to replace here. Until we connect those dots, the transactional things that we try to do to solve this unsolvable is putting a Band-Aid on a carotid. I'm talking so fast I can't talk. A Band-Aid on a carotid artery, in my humble opinion, Graham said. So I encourage you to look at it. And I think it's one of those things where he says a church helped fund it as well. If we were to say we were going to have a church and some really philanthropically minded people get together, locate a piece of property, one rich person purchases it and donates it to the actual, the homeless organization. One of the homeless ministries that used to operate downtown that had their building taken from them because the area had become gentrified, that guy, he could run the community in partnership with these Christian organizations. And all of a sudden, now you've got something going. Now you've got people in St. Louis who, they may not want the neighborhood in their backyard, but they'd certainly send a check for $100 or commit to be a partner for $15 a month or $100 a month or whatever they can do. It's just takes somebody to get it started. So I do want to get to some of this audio because Noah taught me how to cut audio. It's been a long time coming, but I now know how to cut my own audio. So here is Collins talking about the Democrats. Actually, in this amount of time we have left, I want to go to Gingrich. I have some audio from Newt Gingrich talking about the rallies, talking about what the Democrats are doing. Good stuff. Here we go.
It's astonishing. He's declared the winner about 2:30 in the morning, and the next day, you already have 8 or 9 cities where left-wingers have organized anti-Trump rallies. By December 15th, you have a Vanity Fair article about how the impeachment process is underway. And on the very day that the president is sworn in, January 20th, 2017, the Washington Post has a story about the Democrats planning for impeachment. So Nancy Pelosi is simply carrying out what is an unconstitutional coup d'etat, an effort to use the power of the Congress to change the outcome for the American people. And it's a direct assault on the whole idea of representing the American people and instead imposing Democratic members of Congress as the ultimate electoral college. And I think it'll backfire very badly. The president in Minnesota was in a state where Colin Peterson is a longtime Democrat. His district voted for Trump by 30 points. I think it'll be very hard for Peterson to go with Nancy Pelosi, vote for impeachment, and get reelected. And she's going to put a lot of people in that kind of a choice.
And then here he is talking a little bit about having to do with this same topic.
Well, I think it tells you where the country is. We are as close to a cultural civil war as we have been since the 1860s. You have people very deeply divided. They have literally live in 2 different realities. And I think that you have sort of the pro-impeachment left desperate to get to Trump, led by the New York Times and the Washington Post and the major networks. Then you have millions of people for whom Trump is the first president to really stand up for what they think their values are. And so that's why he consistently is in the 43 to 45 or 46% range of approval, because those people don't care about the noise. They see a guy who they think delivered on the economy, delivered on conservative judges.
And I'm cutting it off there. It was just the last 10 seconds where he was running down some of the accomplishments of the president. So I just encourage you this weekend, I'm feeling led to myself, just see if there's anything homeless-wise that maybe we can do. I know our church does some stuff with it, and we can contribute to that. And so I just, you know what? God bless you. Have a fantastic weekend. I'll be back with you next week on Monday with more cool Stacy on the Right Show stuff. God bless and have a fantastic weekend.